Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns. Pardon me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm so excited I can hardly speak. How about that? Even though I speak every single day into this camera, I get choked up sometimes because I get so excited. So before we get into today's work, I wanna first do a little bit of housekeeping here. Okay, I know that yesterday I said that I was going to post the link to next Wednesday's Learning to Surf meeting and meditation. I forgot to do it, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to put it in there now. And the reason why I want to do the reason why I'm kind of calling this out is I want you to know something, okay? And I know I mentioned this yesterday, but sometimes I think, I don't know, maybe people don't listen to the very end of the videos, and that's cool. I get it. It's a half hour, and I mean, I can't listen to a half-hour podcast every day myself. So I don't feel at all anything negative at all for you or for me if you don't listen to the whole thing. That's totally fine. But in case you didn't listen till the end, right? I wanted to make sure you know something, okay? That every week I do this on Wednesday evening. It happens at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, which would be 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 6 o'clock on the West Coast. Yeah, that is west, I think. And actually, that's west. So there or there. And so, so anyway, pardon me. At 7 o'clock Mountain Time, which is 6 o'clock on the West Coast and 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and then of course 8 o'clock in the Central Time Zone, I host a little meeting, and it's what we do is we kind of settle in, we do a little meditation for about a half hour or so, and then for another half hour or so, and oftentimes we go beyond the 1 hour mark, and that's totally fine by me. But in the next half hour after the meditation, what we do is we have a discussion, right? And in this discussion, I'm really playing the role of coach. I mean, I'm not really coaching, more generalizing and just sort of, answering questions that people have and helping people to understand aspects of mindfulness. But there are people in this group who ask specific questions, and I find myself specifically coaching them at times. And so the reason I bring this up is because, look, I know how hard it is out there right now. Okay, financially, logistically, stressfully, the whole thing, right? There's, everything's sort of opening up again now, and it seems as though we're out of COVID. And I don't know, I'll believe it when I see it. Who knows what's going to happen? But again, like I always tell people, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, you never, ever, ever could have predicted what happened this year or this past, between 2020 and 2021, right? There's no way anybody could have predicted that, right? And so who knows what's going to come next, right? So even though it feels like, oh, we're coming out of this and everything's going to get back to normal, well, first of all, back to normal, I don't think that was very good for most people. I don't think normal was very sustainable for a lot of people. And so the reason I'm bringing this up, even though I don't talk about, this is not a political podcast and it's not a societal kind of podcast. It's really a mindfulness podcast. It's a podcast for giving you the tools to in the here and now, kind of make sense of life and coexist with life, right? So that you can be a functional and well, healthy member of society. Right. And so that's the whole function of this podcast. Right. But that's, we can't ignore the social, political, economic realities. Right. And the social, political, economic realities are that, there's a lot of people who are struggling. Right. And you might be one of those people who is struggling. In fact, somebody just left me a message about how they were struggling. Right. And so that's the reason I bring up this midweek mindfulness meeting that I do every Wednesday evening, right? That's what we call it. It's the midweek mindfulness meetup with Art Burns, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's totally free. Okay, totally free. Right now, I know I offer you a free one-time coaching session that also is totally free, but it's just a one-time thing. I can't, I wish, like, like my wife and I talk about it all the time. If we win the lottery one day, I'll just do this for free all the time. Like I'll come to your house and I'll do this for you for free, But that's not the reality, right? The reality is that I have a family to support. I have bills to pay. I have, a life to upkeep, not an extravagant life. Everything you see here is pretty old and not expensive, but it requires, a financial flow, right? And so doing this as a means of making a living is just the reality, right? But that's why I suggest this Wednesday evening session, right? Because yes, we do ask for donations. Anybody able to give donations, we ask, and many people are very generous, and we're very grateful for that, right? But it's a reason why we call it a donation, because perhaps your donation is zero, and that is okay, right? Like, we are fully prepared for nobody to give donations if that's how it happens, right? Obviously, it's not what we want because it's cost us money to do this, but either way, it's not like we're not going to do it. It's not like I'm not going to show up and I don't even know who donates and who doesn't, to be honest with you. That's all handled by Adam. So it's like I'm just showing up and doing my thing, right? And so if you feel like you might benefit from having a little session like that, right? No, it's not one-on-one, but in a way that's even better, because sometimes, person A will ask a question that person T didn't realize that she had also. And person B might see, a follow-up question from person T and realize that was something that they wanted to say that helps person D, right? So it's all such a beautiful flow of guidance and help and assistance, right? And it's an opportunity for you to ask a question if you have one, right? It's also a great meditation we do every week. So at worst case scenario, you're doing a 30-minute guided meditation, which is going to feel amazing, right? And it's guided by me, so I'm including all of the stuff that I talk about here, right? I'm engineering the practices to teach you mindfulness. And so yeah, I mean, we could absolutely charge a good bit of money for what we're delivering in this, but we don't. And so I want you to know that, right? Because if you're in hard times, if you've come upon hard times and you're struggling, like most of us are on some level, well then come on in, right? Come on in, just show up. You can keep your camera off if you want to. It's okay, right? But this is a resource that's available for you. So I just wanted you to know about that. So now I'm going to do my best to remember to put the link in the description below so that you can check it out. But yeah, just letting you know. Okay? All right. So yesterday we talked about, I'm going to have a little cup of tea here, like a nice Brit. I follow this guy online who's a musician. He's a beautiful, beautiful musician. His name's Ben Chapman, if you want to, Chapman. He's from the UK, and he plays this just beautiful guitar songs that they just touch my heart. And so there's this thing on Facebook now, since from the whole pandemic and the quarantine, this group started this thing called Socially Distant Fest. So for all the musicians who are not able to go to bars and make their money and stuff like that, they perform on a camera on Facebook, and then you can give them little tips with Venmo and stuff like that. And it's just been such a great thing. And so Ben is one of the people who are in this Socially Distant Fest, and he's just such a magical poet and musician. I hope you look him up. But anyway, he's British, so he says, "Oh, let me get my cup of tea." So I just love that. Anyway, to you, Ben. Thank you for the tunes. So yesterday we talked a lot about perfectionism, right? And like I did the talking, but we were in a conversation together with regards to perfectionism, and so I want to follow up a little bit on that with something else that in the black book, in my little moleskin black notebook, what I put in for today's topic was how I used to be so absolutely pessimistic about life and so unmotivated in my life. And a lot of people have a hard time believing that, right? Because now I am completely opposite, right? I have all kinds of motivation, and I am, if anything, sometimes maybe overly optimistic, right? I don't feel like I really am. I mean, I'm not like a toxic positivity kind of guy, or like, oh, just be happy and everything will be fine kind of thing. I don't buy into it like on that level. But I do see optimism. I refuse not to see the potential for things to work out. I don't. And that's in every single circumstance. And that is a healthy thing, right? That is part of my psychological well-being, right? Now, that's not to say that somebody who is pessimistic is unhealthy, right? Or doing something that's wrong, right? There's a need for people to be pessimistic, right? Because they're going to think of the worst case scenarios. Those are the people who are really good at creating like safety guidelines in the world, right? Like, you don't want somebody like me creating safety guidelines, right? Because I'm going to be the guy that says, oh yeah, don't worry, everybody will figure that out. Again, not to such a comical degree, but that wouldn't be my strength, right? I am not going to be the person who thinks of all the things that could go wrong. I'm the guy who thinks of all the things that could go right. And so we need people who think about all the things that go wrong. So by no means am I saying that it's wrong to be pessimistic, right? But really what it comes down to is your pessimism authentically you, right? Or is it not authentically you? And that's the difference, right? Because back when, right, my pessimism was unhealthy pessimism, and it certainly wasn't the authentic art, right? I had a job way back then. My first career was in kind of a sales position. Like I repped, printing and reproduction services from these big companies with all the big ad agencies, like the kind of names that you'd hear on Mad Men, right? Like the big deal, right? It wasn't just like a printing, like a copy shop kind of thing. This was like big time printing. Like when you go into, whatever big department stores, right? And you go by the cosmetics counters and you see those huge big posters that are backlit and the cards on the counter and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's the stuff I used to produce, right? Like not like, dime store, cheap stuff, like very, really high end, right? And so it was all on a commission basis, right? And I had to, like, if the sales didn't happen, then I didn't get paid. Right. And that's how it went. And in fact, I remembered last night a time where, in about 1998, where my salary was cut in half one day, just came in and boom, that's it. To this week, you're making half as much as you made last week. Congratulations. Right. And so, I mean, I definitely had some reason for some pessimism, but I used to be just absolutely up a wall about it. I used to be convinced. Right? If somebody told me, okay, Art, you're going to do this job that's going to start next, 2 weeks from today, right? For those 2 weeks, right, I would be convinced, like 100% convinced that I wasn't going to get the job. There was nothing to indicate to me that I wasn't going to get the job. There was nothing there was no evidence in any kind of way. But yet I was convinced, and I'm talking like convinced, like I was 100% sure. Like every time the phone rang, I was like, oh, is that Debbie telling me that the job's off? Right? That's the level of which it was, right? And so that's not healthy, right? It's one thing to say like, okay, there's a competition for this job and Debbie was non-committal about it. So I don't know if I'm going to get it. There's a reality of that, right? Like there's the ability to be realistic about it, of course, right? And that kind of healthy pessimism to sort of create reality, well, that works, right? But to assume that things are going to go bad, that's a sign that something's going on, right? That's a sign that somewhere inside you're not really being authentic. And so when I look back on it, right, of course I see that it's very tied into that perfectionism that I used to live with. Right? The idea that I had to get everything right, that I had to be, this successful business person. I had to have, the new gadgets. Like I remember back then, like going into a store and spending like $1,000 on a digital camera was like, I didn't do any research. I think I just went in, put my credit card down and took it, and that's just the way I used to live. Right. But I felt like if I couldn't live that way, then somehow I was a failure. Right. And so, of course, this is what breeds that pessimism. And this is, of course, what gets in the way of motivation too. Right. Now, motivation is deeply tied into our emotions. Right. So, in fact, your motivation is 100% your emotions in many ways, right? Even something like hunger, right? Like we often think like hunger, that's a biological imperative, right? Like I cannot not eat. Sure, that's true, right? Your body will start breaking down, but that doesn't happen for like a month, right? You could not eat for like a month before your body starts showing signs of failing health because of a lack of food, right? So when you feel that pain in your stomach, that little, gurgling in your stomach, right? You feel like, I got to go eat something. Like, this is important. Like, I better eat fast. Even though nothing's going to happen to you if you don't, it's because it's an emotional thing, right? You're afraid. What happens if I don't eat? And yes, that's your body making you do that, of course. And that's your body making sure that you never get to that point of starvation, right? Your body is creating that fear to say, hey, this stomach growling, this is an important thing here. So you better go fix this. You better go take care of yourself. Get something to eat, right? But it's an emotional response. The motivation to go to the refrigerator, go out to the pizza place or whatever it is, that's an emotional motivation. Right? And remember, we're always motivated one of two ways, right? We're either motivated towards something we love, or we're motivated away from something we fear, right? And so, if we're afraid of not getting the job, we're afraid of not being the perfect relationship, we're afraid of not having enough stuff in our lives, right? When we're engaged in that fear on a moment to moment basis, well, then that's going to impact everything that happens beyond that. Right? It's going to hold us back from taking action, and it's also going to create the negative thoughts that are going to be very pessimistic. And so you're going to assume the worst case scenario in all opportunities. You're going to look for opportunities to assume the worst. Subconsciously, but still you are. And so this all ties together. And so I want to tell you a little personal story that just happened yesterday. So, and me cup of tea first. So, sorry, my son and I talk in these terrible British accents all day long. It's like a fun game we have. We actually went to the store the other day, and he said that my son's at the time 9 years old. He just turned 10. So he said to this lady at the the cashier, he says, "Obviously we're British, but we're putting on an Aussie accent." He didn't sound Australian or British, but the girl behind the counter, God bless her, she jumped right into a British accent with him. It was just the most adorable thing. Anyway, sorry to digress. Yes. Okay. So let me tell you a story about what happened yesterday. I'm sorry, I digressed here. I totally lost the flow here, but we'll get it back. Trust me. I'm a professional. I got you. So Wednesday night, right? As I just told you, I do this wonderful group every Wednesday night, and it's the way that I end my night on Wednesday. And Wednesday is my Monday reminder, right? So at the end of my first day of my week is always just this joyous, beautiful, just absolutely fulfilling, experience, right? I mean, I get to really connect with some very, very wonderful people. I get to feel their gratitude. I get to see the understanding on their face. I get to guide them through these beautiful meditations, which with me, every time I guide meditation, it's always going to include some level of compassion, right? So it always feels good. And I know that it feels good for them. And I know that I'm helping them feel good. And it just feels wonderful, right? And so Wednesday, I had a couple of other great meetings I have, a full schedule on Wednesday. So I had lots of great meetings, lots of great, beautiful stuff happening, right? And I went to bed just on Wednesday night, just absolutely elated, right? Just feeling like this is the life that I've always dreamed of. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. There's nothing wrong at all. I mean, of course, we have money issues. We have, rent's coming up and we're scratching our head. We had our son's birthday, so we spent a little extra money, so it's not that nothing's wrong, right? But it's just the way that I feel is just perfect, right? And I mean that as a pun, right? Perfect, right? Because there is no perfect, right? We know that. But anyway, went to bed Wednesday night feeling that, right? And then Thursday morning I wake up, and every morning I do my meditation, and I've been doing some compassion meditation. I would love to share that with you. If you want, book a call with me. I'll share you the compassion meditation that I do every morning. It feels wonderful, and I picture people in my life, and I just offer them the compassion, and then I get to talk to them, and it's like, oh, you're the person that you were in my mind this morning. You were so happy in my mind, and I worked so hard to make you happy in my mind, and here we are speaking. It changes things so significantly. In fact, I just helped somebody yesterday who was going into a job interview. Right, this woman had 3. You know who you are. I know you're listening. She had 3 job interviews for the same job in one day. And so I recommended to her after the first one, she called me and she's like, I'm not feeling well. I got this. I'm nervous and all this kind of stuff. There's lots of different details to the story. But basically, I explained my compassion practice and said, picture the person that you're going to interview with and picture their struggle. Picture them struggling with something, suffering through something, because they do. We all do. We're all suffering in some level, struggling on some level. And so picture their struggle and let your heart wish for the end of their suffering. And she texted me right after the last interview. She said, that helped so much. So I'm going to, so there it is. That's the practice, basically. If you want more details on it, just book a call, send me an email. I'll talk you through it. So that's how I start my day every day on Thursday. So it wasn't a Thursday thing. I was still feeling real good coming out of my meditation on Thursday. And then I look at my phone, right? And I see that one of my clients had canceled a meeting same day. It's okay. It happens. I get it. It's totally cool. And then another client canceled like last minute. Like I basically texted about an hour or so before the meeting, and that's okay too. I get it. It's not a problem, right? But it was like a bummer, right? Like all of a sudden I had all this extra time on my hands, and I was like, well, shoot, I wish I had known that I had this extra time on my hands. Maybe I would have planned something with my kids or done something like that. And it's a little bit of a bummer. And so now I'm feeling a little, that's just, just a little less energy, just a little bit, right? And then, well, let me tell you the story from the back end, right? So somewhere around like 2 or 3 o'clock yesterday, I found myself just absolutely down in the dumps. Like I could have cried at any given moment. I could have cried at how I felt yesterday. Now, again, I jumped on the call with my clients and helped her with her job interviews and stuff. So it's not that I can't like shake it off and get to work and but I still felt like, I felt like a heaviness and a sadness, like sort of a pall over me, right? And so I took out my journal. I was like, I got to figure this out. Like, this is not, I'm feeling like really crappy. And I had like, because of the cancellations, I had like 3 hours to wait for my last appointment, which was, a 6 o'clock appointment, and so I was like, I got to figure this out. I can't, I just gotta do something here. So I took out my journal. I said, this is what I need to do. I need to work through this. Right. And as I'm journaling, it came to my attention. I realized, I found out, I discovered that, you know what? Right now I'm reading this book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk, MD, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Famous book. Amazing rave reviews of everybody that I've ever heard or read, and I'm about not really very, so where are you, very far in at this point. Don't have a ton of Post-its here, but the thing about this book is that it's all about trauma, right? And so it's just story after story after story of people who are suffering with trauma. And lo and behold, what do you think happens when you read 100 pages of this book in a day, or 50 pages or 30 pages or whatever it was that I read? I mean, I had a good amount of time to read. So I was like, hey, this is perfect. No appointments. Let me catch up on this reading, or let me get, as deeply into this reading as I can. Because the reason I'm doing this is to understand my own trauma, but also to help to be educated on trauma, so that, because most of the clients that I have right now, and most of the clients I'll ever have, because most of the people in the world, like 90% of the people in this world, have experienced trauma as children or as adults. And so it makes me a more informed coach. And it makes me more, it gives me more of a full offering, if you will, right? But guess what it also does? It makes me think of my own trauma, right? It makes me remember. It makes me, relive it in certain ways. And that's what I found myself doing yesterday without even realizing, right? And that's how it sneaks up on you. I realized that I was just in this funk, just like a terrible, terrible state of physical and emotional. My state was just so low and so sad and heavy and blah. And so it was in my mindful inquisition of this, right? As I investigated, okay, where is this coming from? What is going on here? Because of the practice I've done, it didn't take me long to put it all together and realize, like, oh, it's just because of the book and because of the change in schedule. And so therefore now there's nothing wrong. This is not imperfect that I'm not feeling good today. It's actually, how could I not be not feeling good reading this book? Right? And it's okay. And in feeling this, guess what? I'm learning about myself, and I'm growing through my own healing of my own trauma. So the book is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, right? It's not that something's wrong. It's not that something's bad. It's just that this happens to be a circumstance in which my emotions are going to be very heavy, right? And so, but at any moment I can stop and I can recognize it, and then I can do things to change it, right? And that's what I did, right? When I realized after I did this journaling, I was like, okay, look, I have an hour left before this next meeting that I have, or an hour and a half, I think it was. So I had lots of time. It's like, let me do a couple of things that I love to do, right? Let me do a couple of things that bring me just automatic joy, and then see what happens, right? Be curious about it. So what I did, I repotted a fern that I brought back from the brink of death. I mean, this thing's not quite out of the woods yet, but my, oh my, I almost murdered this plant like a year ago. I took it from like the windowsill, and I said, you know what? In Colorado, it's real dry. I know that ferns like moisture. Let me put it in the bathroom. Also next to the window, it's facing the same way. So there was like, I couldn't understand it, but like 3 days later, the whole thing went from green to brown. Like the whole thing, it looked like it was dead. I was like, oh my gosh, this poor little plant. So I put it back where it was, and I just slowly cared for it. And it's been like, coming up on 2 years now, and there's still a lot of brown, but there's a lot of green, and it's coming back. It's fighting its way back. And so yesterday I just rewarded this little baby with a new pot, right? Because ferns like to be moist, and so I had it in a terracotta pot, which kind of wicks the moisture out of the soil. So I put it in a ceramic pot that will hold the moisture in the soil. Even better, right? And so I did that, and I was already feeling better, right? And then I said, hey, Casey, my son, I said, let's go for a walk. I love my walks with my son. We walk like 6-8 blocks, and we just have these crazy, beautiful conversations. And so I did that. And by the time we got back from all of that, I didn't feel that heaviness anymore. I didn't feel that weight on me anymore. Because I took away the stimulus that was creating it. And I created a new stimulus. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with feeling sad. And it was okay that I felt sad. It's not that I had to change it. But I decided I wanted to change it. I had sat with it for so long. I said, you know what? This isn't comfortable. I'd rather feel happy right now. I've got to get on a call with clients. I want to be in a happy place. I want to be in an uplifted, more well place. And so once I identify the source of the pessimism and the pessimism and the lack of motivation, right? Because that's what I was feeling again, right back to where I used to be. That was the very familiar feeling of just everything's going to be bad. I'm not, my clients tomorrow are all going to cancel on me. I'm not going to make enough money. We're going to get kicked out of our apartment. That's the way my thoughts were going. So I stopped and I recognized that that's, my thoughts were that way for a reason. And then once I knew the reason why my thoughts were going that way, now I can create a reason for my thoughts to go the other way. And that's what I did. And that's where self-awareness is so important, right? Because it's in that awareness that we can see the simple solutions. Because the solution was super simple. It wasn't like I had to do anything extravagant at all. It took a little walk and put a plant from one pot to another pot. These are some of the most basic things anybody could ever do. But yet, look at the difference. And it all came from that place of awareness. And that awareness came from the practices. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want some help figuring out how to set up a routine of practicing, I'm actually talking to somebody today about perhaps creating a mobile app that I can help with. So there's big things happening, but if you're looking for some help, in the description, there's a link. That link, you click it, you go into my calendar, you pick a day. The day will pop up with the available times. Pick one of those times, enter your name, your email address, hit save, you're done. I take it from there, okay? And all you got to do is ask the question you want to know the answer to. If it's practice, I'll teach you the practices. If it's just understanding something, I'll help you understand something. If it's just somebody to listen, then I will just listen. It's in your hands, all right? I wish you well, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a beautiful moment, and I hope that each moment today offers you an opportunity, or I hope you recognize the opportunity that each moment provides to be present, to be accepting, to be compassionate, and to be curious. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.